Welcome to Paranormal Latte Podcast. I am your host, Dr. Kelly Renee Schutz. Sit back and relax with us. Grab yourself a really good drink. Spend an hour and let's delve into a world of chatter about the mysteries of the unexplained. Whether you are a skeptic or a believer makes no difference. It's not always in your imagination. Enjoy your day. Now that was good. Now that was good. Good day, everyone, and thanks again for joining me for yet another episode of Paranormal Latte Podcast. My name is Dr. Kelly Renee Schutz. I am the host and the producer of this show. Today we have with us Anita Jo Intenzo. She was on another program of mine a few years back, checking in with her, seeing how she's doing. She's got a couple books out, and she has quite the nerves of steel. She lives with some pretty nasty energies, and we're going to tell that story to you, and you're going to learn all about her in just a moment. Plus, she was on a TV show called A Haunting. Some of you may remember that. And yeah, stay tuned because she will be talking a little bit about how that all began as well. But before we start that interview, why don't we learn just a little bit more about my special guest, Anita Jo Intenzo. We have a special guest with us this evening. Anita Jo Intenzo is in the house. Anita is a classically trained fine artist. She graduated with honors from Moore College of Art and Design in Philadelphia, earning a Bachelor's of Science degree in art education. For the past 40 years, she has been restoring old photos and had created a business called Past Images by Anita in the year 2000. In her business, she preserves and restores family treasures such as photos, paintings, and antique dolls as a restoration artist. In 2009, Anita's life took a dramatic turn when a friend of hers had passed away. He had asked that she take charge of his belongings and do with the belongings as she deemed fit. However, in the process of cleaning up his estate, she had begun having extreme poltergeist and paranormal experiences that are so beyond belief that one really has to sit back and wonder what is truly going on out in our world. From these experiences, she had written a couple of books, A State of Horror and Dark Transference. She has also been seen, as well as her story heard, on the TV show called A Haunting in December of 2014, where the episode's name is simply Portal of Doom. Anita lives with her family and several stubborn resident ghosts in Philadelphia on a property that dates back to the 1800s. Her paranormal journey continues as she and her son have been the recipients of targeted paranormal attacks and have enlisted the aid of the world-renowned deliverance minister Bill Bean to perform spiritual cleansings at her home. But there is a lot more to this story than meets the eye, and of course our show tonight is just the icing on an entire cake. So we might as well just get right on into it and meet my guest this evening, Anita Jo Intenzo. Hello, Anita, and welcome back to the show.
Thank you so much for having me again, Kelly. I much appreciate it.
Oh, Oh, she is one interesting lady, and I think you're going to enjoy this show. I would say that we have kind of a celebrity on today, so we'll get into that in just a moment here. And I know that we're all our worst critics on stuff like that, but you'll understand why after we have our talk. So, Anita, or do you want to be referred to as Anita Jo? Which one is?
Anita's fine.
Fine. Okay, that sounds good. I would like to. We have a new audience here watching several shows of you and hearing you, and so I think we'll start very simply by with having you kind of give a easy introduction of yourself, a little bit about yourself, and then we're going to go into the main question, which is how did you fall into this paranormal stuff? So let's start there.
Well, I've been an artist almost all my life. Graduated from Moore College of Art with honors in Philadelphia and did teaching for a while. Then I got into the commercial field, and really paranormal was something really far from my thinking. But I was also going into photo restoration. I restore antique dolls. I preserve paintings that people will bring to me. I have my own studio here in my home. In 2009, while I was just pretty much raising my family and doing my work commissions, my dear friend of 30 years passed away suddenly, and when the hospital called me, they said, your name was in his wallet and we're contacting you. So that was really a surprise because I rushed to the hospital, but when I got there, he had already passed away. There was no way they could save him. So that was a really big shock because not only you're getting a phone call to say your friend is in serious condition, but then you get there, you're waiting to hear the news, and then they tell you that they couldn't save him. He had just a massive heart attack. Mm-hmm. So I identified his body, had to pick up some of his belongings, and then go to his home, which was in the evening. And it was a little bit of a crazy time. I got my son to go with me. I said, I don't know what I'm facing here. I know he has 2 cats that might be in distress. So I had to go through a round of keys to get into his home. Hadn't been in his house lately. He used to come to my house for lunch on different occasions. Went into the house, was pretty concerned with some of the hoarding that was boxes and furniture was everywhere, but also the 2 cats were still alive. So I immediately called a man that I knew was in a packet of names and phone numbers. When my friend was going to Germany only the previous year, he had given me an envelope with his lawyer information and said, look, if anything, God forbid, happens to me, I'm overseas, but you have all my information. So I had put that away in my drawer, not knowing how soon it was going to come in handy. So I did have the name of a gentleman who had taken care of the cats while he was away. So I called him. He came to look in on the cats. And I said, look, why don't you do that the rest of the week? You have the key to get in. I don't have any facility, or I'm not used to taking care of animals. So that was like all these things were hitting me all at once. Like I'm in his house. It was eerie because he had already passed away. I didn't know the state of the house or the state of the animals. So that was my first introduction. Like, okay, what am I facing here? So then I met with his lawyer the next day. He said, you're the executor and you've got the keys to the kingdom. Well, I didn't know I was getting keys to a nightmare. That was only the beginning, because I've said to people, like, 1 minute I'm living a normal life and the next minute becomes paranormal, that I had no idea what I was stepping into. I had always been interested watching the TV shows, paranormal, the ghost hunters, whatever. And, I've always been interested in things that might be beyond this life, just having a general interest. But I was also raised a strict Catholic. So you did tend to kind of put those things aside and not give into thinking, do I really want to pursue studying this more? Anyway, the following weeks, we were faced with the task of having to clean out his house, which was in a hoarding situation. I was just dumbfounded. Just each room was just filled with boxes and documents. And then the basement was a nightmare all in itself, just floor to ceiling, stacked with everything and anything that he collected. Now, he was an anthropologist and had traveled around the world with his parents. They had been to South America a number of times. They had been to Europe, and also his home home country of Germany. So I had to start figuring out, okay, I've got a will here that the lawyer handed me, 7 pages, and I've got to find all these things. So the next 10 months, we spent close to 30 hours or more a week with going through documents, box after box, figuring out where did these go to, what do I need to see in the will, and also to get the paperwork because he passed away. There was finances had to be put in order. Yeah. And just with all that, and I'm also taking care of 2 elderly sick parents. Mm-hmm. As we were starting within the first few weeks of clearing out room by room and trying to box things up, we started getting paranormal, which we call paranormal action. Mm-hmm. Things started flying around the room. We would never know when something was going to be smashed against the wall. We had eerie voices that were disembodied voices, scratching noises going on in the walls, which was terrifying at some points because why are we hearing all the scratching noises? Mm-hmm. And also just strange activity that we couldn't put a finger on, like what is going on here? So, our main focus was we've got to get this place organized. And we have to just continue doing this because people said, well, why didn't you just leave? You couldn't leave. I was the executor. He didn't want anybody in his house, especially his brother that they had been estranged for 10 years. His brother came to see me the day after his brother passed away because the lawyer called him. And he was at odds with me. We were at a war with each other. Him saying to me, why you? I said, well, your brother left me in charge. And I'm going to do it to the best of my ability. So he was more worried about things being thrown out that belonged to the family or just discovering things, I think. And I said, look, you don't know me. I said, I will leave no stone unturned. Anything that belongs to you, it will get packed up and I'll call you to come and get your things. I said, you don't know me. I said, what I will do for, and I promised him, on his deathbed, when I saw him and had to claim his body, I promised him right there, I will take care of everything. Paul, don't worry. So then the brother kind of calmed down because he knew himself that he couldn't do what I was doing because he lived over an hour away. He himself had a heart attack only years before that. So that was in the family. So that's what started my journey, Kelly, that I spent the next 10 months at my friend's house going through boxes. And as we're doing that, we are getting all this strange activity that I started keeping a diary. Because I said, no one's going to believe this. I have to keep a record. This is not just a one-off thing. This is going on every single time that we're there. And we're spending, as I said, 5 days a week, like 30 or more hours we're putting in just so we could start clearing out a room by room, seeing what was trash, what had to be put aside for family, what had to be sent back to Germany that he asked me to do, plus people out west that were also in the will so I had to go through and see, okay, this category is this person, but just trying to do that with weird things where things would just topple over when you're in one part of the room and things would just topple over. We were in his bedroom, which was like a mini museum. As I said, he was an anthropologist. He collected statues and dolls and artifacts. So things were stacked up on one wall of his room in these Tupperware bins. And our first inkling of something not being right with the house is we're in his room. We were comprising, say, okay, what we're in here, let's see what we have to start packing up. And as we walked out to go and get trash bags, we heard this huge crash. And I'm thinking, I don't know what just fell down. It could be part of the bookcase. Here was the Tupperware bins that had been against one wall, had been thrown from the wall from the bins into the middle of the room and opening the contents, which was Native American artifacts were inside. So we're saying, who just did that? So I called out because I did believe that there could be something after this life. And I just said, if it's you, do you know that you passed away? I said, I don't know if it's you because it is your room, but please, we're only trying to do what you asked me to do. And things calmed down after that, but it still meant we had to start packing things from his room, putting them aside, and that was just the beginning. We had so much stuff happen in the basement as we were clearing out one whole wall because there was water seeping in and we're getting flooded. And that was just making our task even worse with black mold developing. So we had a crew come in to dig up part of the basement for a channel. Well, all hell broke loose when we did that. They no sooner finished that channel, and we were starting to place things over the opposite end, expecting them to do the construction, that we had things flying, books flying off shelves. We saw a tin can that was on a shelf. We saw it hop. It actually hopped, and then it until it fell off the shelf. It's like, did you just see that? It's like, and then we had a friend come over who was helping my son because we had to go up and down steps. There was no entrance from the basement to outside, so everything had to go upstairs. And he just said, "What is going on down here?" He said, "I just saw something whiz right past my face over here." And it turned out to be like a seashell, because my friend had been in Hawaii, and it was like anything and everything you could imagine that was collected down there. And that was just part of the strangest thing. We walked in one day, and as soon as we opened the door to the kitchen, which then there's a door to go to the basement, we heard somebody said, "Who's there?" It sounded like a woman. My son's friend said, "Did you just hear that?" He's looking down the door. He starts screaming. He goes, "There's somebody down the basement." I go, "What are you talking about?" Like, "Danny, what are you talking about?" "I just saw a guy walk down below the steps." I said, "What did he look like?" "He was tall. He had dark hair. He had like a white shirt and khaki pants on." I go, "That's my friend. You just described my friend. Tall with dark hair and wearing like, khaki pants and a shirt that he always." I said, "You saw a full body apparition." Because "I don't know what that is, but I don't know if I want to stay here and help you guys." Well, Danny was probably the longest one who did survive to come with us. But the one day where we were going down the basement and he's following us, the door slammed between us and Danny. He's in the kitchen. We're on the steps to the basement, and we can't open the door. It's frozen. He is screaming on the other end, saying, "Someone's behind me," and screaming in my ear. He said, I turned around, and he ran out the door. We finally got the door open, and he's out the back door. He says, "I'm not coming back." I said, "Why, Danny?" "You didn't see what I saw." I turned there's this face that looked at me and screaming in my ear. And we had left a recorder in the kitchen while this was all going on. And we actually got that of this screech, like saying, "Get out," kind of thing. So that was part of our problem. You would have people one day maybe helping you just to get trash bags, just an extra pair of hands. They would have so much they would see or be part of. "I don't think I'm coming back." We didn't believe you. Now I believe you, because seeing is believing. But we had incidents. It's like all in my book, A State of Horror, that's on Amazon, that I took all the diary information, all the recordings, and things that I wrote verbatim, put that into the book. So you could see where it was an intelligent haunting, because we would go and listen to the recordings at the end of the day, that we would just leave things on and then see what would happen. And it would be where it was interacting, where somebody was talking to us with our friend, and the other voice was like also interjecting like sarcastic remarks, like because Danny found a small bottle of his little bottles of booze that you would get from a flight. He says, "Oh, look, I think I'll have a drink." And then a voice said, "Drink up, buddy." It's like, what? So I can laugh now, but when you're in that situation, it's the absurdity is what got us to laugh, because when you're there and you are walking by in the kitchen and a bucket of pens and pencils and stuff, the bucket just comes and smashes into you, and you just say, "I'm out of here." It's like we would have to say, "This is quits for the day. We're going to have to come back tomorrow, but this is it. I can't do this anymore today." It would just be a continuous round. But that lasted for 10 months until we then signed over that we were at the lawyer's office, and that was in October. And I said to my son, "We got to get this done. I'm not going to be here for Halloween, because this is just too much. I don't want to be here." We walked into the house, and we're hearing dripping water. And I said, "Did somebody leave a faucet on?" I said, "We weren't here yet yesterday." We go into there's only one bathroom up on the first floor. We're in there, and the whole bathroom is flooded.
Oh, no.
Yeah. And so I said to him, "Where's the water coming from?" Here it was from the toilet that was running, we didn't know at the time. He just turned off the water immediately that he found the valve. But I'm taking the rug that was on the floor, I just grabbed it and put it into the bathtub.
Yeah.
No sooner did I do that, I got this thump right from underneath me that something wants to come up through the floor. And I said to myself, if a coffin comes through this floor, I'm out of here, because I'm thinking of poltergeist. I said, if something comes through this floor, I'm not ever coming back here. Yeah. So we then investigate down the basement, and we could see the water dripping from where it had been in the bathroom. It was coming down, and it's all pooling down into the basement. And I said, oh my God, we just sold this place, and now this is all happening. It was dripping right through the floorboards. Well, I go upstairs to call a plumber see if we can get an emergency guy come in, because we don't know where the water's coming from. My son's screaming at me. He goes, there's somebody here. I saw them walk through the water. I could see the footprints in the water. I said, what's going on? I said, just get out of there. Don't stay in the basement. And I can't get through to the plumber. It's going to voicemail. An emergency number I can't connect with. So then I called the lawyer, and I said, you don't want to believe what's going on here, but could you send somebody, or do you know somebody? We have emergency plumber. The secretary, who we got to know very well, she says, I have somebody I can call right away. I said, please call them, because we don't know what we're into over here. We just left your office. We just signed the paperwork, and now we're getting water damage that I don't understand what's happening. I said, nobody was here yesterday. Nobody used the bathroom. It's something that we're not sure what is going on. So she was headed her way. But before that, we're down the basement again, because we're starting to push the water into where there was now a well that they had finished construction. And we're pushing the water into the area where there was like the well that we can just get rid of it. As we're doing that, pieces of Celotex ceiling, they're flipping off from the ceiling and coming our way like Frisbees. And then there was a small ladder, that comes flying through the air. And my son said, this is dangerous. We can't be down here. There's things coming after us. I said, okay. I don't care about the water in the basement. They'll have to take care of this another time. We get there. So the plumber meets with us. He gets there because we're outside waiting for them. He comes in and he looks at the toilet. He said, there's a huge crack in this porcelain. I said, what do you mean? He said, you have to have a really heavy thing to hit this porcelain to crack that. I said, well, nobody was here. I said, like, the temperature outside is like 90. In here, we have the air conditioner on. It's like 75. There's no extreme temperature thing that would crack this porcelain. He said, that's really strange. And I just looked at my son. Yeah, he said, he thinks it's strange. He thinks it's strange that he doesn't know. And the secretary, meanwhile, she comes in. She's with my son. I'm with the plumber, because he said, we turned off the water. I went downstairs. He said, look, this will dry up. He said, put a fan on down here. He said, but keep the water valve shut. He said, because that whole toilet's going to have to be replaced. He said, look, if you need to have to use the toilet, you can always get a bucket of water and flush it, but you can't fill up the tank anymore. As soon as that's what was happening, the water was releasing from the cracked tank, and that was all pure, clean water, and it kept filling up. So I don't know how much would have been even worse if we hadn't gone there to check on the house. We hadn't been there the day before, because we had all this other stuff we were trying to do with the lawyer. So then the secretary said to us, she says, I'm in here with your son. She comes out and she's smoking. She had to get a cigarette. Yeah. How did you guys do this? She says, I was talking to your son in the living room, and a wallet or something flew from the bedroom. She said, what is going on? I said, do you see what we've been up against? I said, I tried to tell you guys that we were coming and seeing you and giving you our Excel spreadsheets, because we're keeping track of all the expenditures each month, because I not only took on executor, but I had to get the checkbook, because the lawyer wasn't keeping up with the finances. We were getting all these late charges. I said, give me the checkbook. I will sign everything and you'll have a record. There's always going to take any money. I said, I know I'm in charge of the finances, but everything will be kosher. We'll do everything right, which we did. But yeah, she just said, I don't know how you did it. So that's a little different to the end. But it's so much more involved. There's so many more incidents. And as I said, he was the anthropologist, so he left me so many boxes of different things that I said, in the meantime, I'm going to put them in my basement. It's practically empty. I'm not going to go to a storage unit because I wanted to be concerned of, I don't know how much it was going to cost. And that was another expense I didn't want to go through. So I started putting things in my basement. Within the time that we were closing on his house, which we finally, the contractor said, look, there isn't any real damage here because we're going to be ripping out the bathroom anyway. We told him, I said, we don't know what happened. He said, don't worry. And it didn't really cause any real damage, but it was something that we knew. It was like anger that we had sold the house, because we knew from just taking things out of the house and the extent, each time we were removing things, more things would escalate. It's like, we don't want you to take things out of the house. And whether my friend, we weren't sure, was he angry or were there other things? And we found out there was other things in the house, not just my friend, but probably his family, that we were going through things and discovering things that maybe we shouldn't have discovered. But that's what we were tasked. There was nobody's fault that I am the executor. I'm unearthing these things that are concerning me, and who else was going to do it? There was nobody else in charge. So the lawyer, they were able to get the house sold. The contractors were there. And as I told you, Kelly, somebody moved in the year later after they fixed the place, but they only stayed for 2 years. And the house has been sold almost 3 times over. And now I think the people are there for a while, but they've made changes to the house back and forth. They ripped out the enclosed porch and made it open, and now we saw that it's closed again. That they had closed the porch again, because I go right by there to go to our store. It's not far from us. That we go right by his street, and I go, the infamous house. But if people only knew this unassuming rancher what went behind those walls for those 10 months that we were there, they would not believe it, because they figured, this doesn't look like your typical haunted house.
Well, they might believe it. I've got a couple questions. I want to break this down a little bit. We'll go backwards a little bit here.
Sure.
So the first question that I would have in mind, especially since for anyone out there who has purchased a home, okay, I'm going to start with this, and then we'll go backwards. So my first question would be, with all the activity, and believe me, I understand when something gets changed and there's energies residing in there and they're territorial, or whatever they feel makes them at peace. Did the realtor ever disclose, or was it never asked, whether or not the house had any kind of activity or hauntedness to it? Do you know? Because there's a lot of people in 2, 3, hands over of time. You wonder what they went through, if they went through anything at all. You wonder if they had behavior changes, because sometimes that can affect people's moods and the way they act. And then it's like, I'm getting this really weird feeling. Or did they know that it was could have been a haunted house, on disturbed land possibly, and it just acts up. What do you know? What was disclosed about that house, since it's gone through so many hands?
From what we understand, the contractors who bought the house, they didn't seem that they were confronting any kind of activity while they were completely changing out the house. And the gentleman who bought it had been there for the 2 years he was been transferred with his family. I mentioned to you, we were asked to take a look at the house. They invited us to look at the place. And my son said to me, I'm glad I don't have to live here. He said there was an old workbench that belonged to the father, was in the basement, that had been the site of some weird things that happened to us. That was still there. And we saw a couple things out of place that looked like something had been thrown, but they never mentioned anything. In fact, I met the contractors years later, and because I was asking them about something with my house, and I said, I don't know if you guys know this, but we had a lot of weird activity going on. They go, no, we would never have known that. They weren't like aware of a few things might have been out of place, but they didn't have that background or were aware what they were looking for to think, okay, something is amiss here. Now, my son has checked records that when it was between, I think they left, then there was another people that purchased the house. They stayed a few years, then it was another person. So when the time I told you about the weird Comcast bill that the bills were going to his house instead of to us. And somebody had called about it. There was nobody living at the house at the time. And we don't know who called the Comcast to change the addresses, and it happened to be my friend's address that the bills were being sent. And because of that, we weren't paying the Comcast bill. We didn't know they were lost. And it went for a month. And by the second month, I knew something was strange because they said, wait a minute, where's these bills? So we've only seen where there's been change of hands and there's been names, but there's been different realtors each time, because I know that the contractors were on their own. And I think it might have been a realtor who handled the paperwork was through the lawyer. Now the lawyer knew, but I don't think he told the realtor that it was only strange things, because he might have been considering it was only our experience and maybe other people weren't experiencing it, which could possibly be, because I've heard other people say nothing's ever happened. You talk about this house being haunted. The area, from what I understand, is not really particularly is any kind of historic area. Springfield Township, I mean, it's old too, like when we're in Haverford Township. Course now there's a church that he lived right next door to a church, which is even stranger. He's right next door to a church, and they had no idea what was going on. So because we kept it very low key, we had neighbors saying to us, "Oh, do you need some help?" I go, "No, we thank you for your interest, but we can't have anybody else in here." We kept it to my son. It was, of course, the lawyer and his secretary that they knew what was going on, and then, of course, my son's friends, the several friends, and one or two friends that only came to help us out. But then, it's like, wow, it's like, I don't know if anybody would believe us. So we talked about this. So that's, it's been kept pretty much on a low key. Like, I don't know if anybody would even bring it up or if they want to bring it up, in that case.
How did you end up on the TV show? Why don't you tell everybody this story ended up on a national TV program show. I can't remember. Help me out. What was the program again? I can't remember if they're even running anymore.
It was a haunting. Yeah, that was originally on Destination America, and I think it's been changed. It's been on YouTube. Our episode was called Portal of Doom because of one of the investigative teams that we allowed in, who, it's in my book. They said there's a lot of portals in the house that have opened here, and they were attributing it to all the artifacts that my friend had collected, that there was all kinds of energy connected to these various objects, which we were just learning about, Kelly. As I said, we were not really aware, and the kind of novice. And once we were in the midst of this, we started doing some research. I started investigating more, but then we had closed the chapter on that house. And when I wrote my book, A State of Horror, that was then getting traction up on Amazon because it sold several thousand copies right away. And it was, I was getting actually contacted by several paranormal shows. One was, didn't pan out, even though we had an interview, we had a phone interview, and it didn't go anywhere. Meantime, we had connected with our friend who's a exorcist minister, who's world-renowned, Minister Bill Bean. He lives in Maryland. We had all these objects brought into my house, which started activity here. No sooner we had left his house, and within a month or so, we started having activity. It just happened. It just, out of the blue, it was on Christmas Eve. It actually happened where we had things being thrown against our front door inside the house. And my son said, wait a minute. He knew by the sound hitting against something. He said, don't tell me. He said, what's going on? Something's going on over here now. And that happened in the afternoon. I said, well, I don't know. We just can't spend the time here trying to figure this out. These are objects hitting against the door that we had never seen before. It was a woman's hair comb. And then it was one of our mat knives that was in the kitchen. A mat knife was thrown against the front door. So I said to him, look, we just have to put this aside. We have to be over your grandparents for Christmas Eve. We have other people coming over. We just need to get get ready to go. Well, my son was going to go into the bathroom, and before that, we hear a smack against the tile wall, and we see something gold. No, that's right. It was like I said before to the spirits, what are you throwing junk against the door? If you want to throw something, why don't you throw a gold doubloon or something valuable? Like, we're like getting really disgusted, and we're like joking around. Well, I see this thing and it's gold. No, this can't be. Well, it turned out to be a car wash token, tones gold, but it was really old. It was like from the 1950s because it had no area code on it. I said, what is this junk? I said, like, what's happening here? I said, oh, yeah, that's typical. Throw junk. Bang, against the door, the tile, and it's a silver dollar, a Morgan silver dollar. And I noticed the date. It's really an old date. And I said, I don't want to say this, Chris, but I think that's his father's birth date. I think that's
interesting.
The date he was born, because I came across their birth certificates because I'm going through all these documents.
Yeah, exactly.
To see what the date. I go, oh, no. And then, so my son said, I don't have time for this. I'm going in the bathroom. I need to shave. He gets in. He's about to close the door. I saw from my room, as I turn around, I see a shadow following him in to the bathroom. And his shaver comes flying out the door against the wall. He goes, yeah, you broke my shaver. Like, what are you doing? And I was almost like near tears. I said, please. No more. I said, it's Christmas Eve, please. We can't take this anymore. And I called on my friend's name. Please help us. We don't want to deal with this anymore. And everything stopped until the next time. But that's where I wrote the second book. But in the meantime, having Bill Bean connected with us, he was on one of the shows, knew one of the producers of A Haunting. And he said, Anita, I would like, with your permission, to get in touch with so-and-so. And I want to have her talk to you, because he said, the first time he came to our house, he said, first of all, I want to tell you, as soon as I pulled up to the house, there was something here. And I prayed before I walked in to preserve me and preserve you. And as he was talking with us, he went through our house. He said, I believe you guys 100%, because then he shared his story with us. I said, oh my gosh, Bill. I said, it's like we're meeting an old friend. He goes, you're family. He said, I'm going to tell you, from this day on, you guys are like family to me, because I connected with you. I cannot believe the connection we were having here. He just fell in love with my son. He said, your son is fantastic. And he knew I was an artist, and he said, look, you're not making this up. He said, I could tell. And he was a minister, so I guess he could tell people are maybe lying. But I said, Bill, there's no purpose for us to lie. We just want help. So because of his intervention, he started to calm things down. But that also brought us to the attention of the producer. They then had several meetings with us over the phone, a Zoom meeting, and they said, we would like to do the show. So we didn't know for sure, but they did get a screenwriter, and it progressed pretty rapidly, because we were contacted in, I think, January, February with them. By August, we had interviews at a mansion, which I won't say where it is, but they had a common meeting ground with their producers and production people, met at this mansion not far from here. And then we did our interviews with Bill was there, our friend who was the psychic medium, and then my son and I, and that was the Portal of Doom. And then from there, it went into where they actually did another show connected with that called Demon Possession, but that only had a short airing because of copyright issues. They only had that, but that was more of an extension of what was going on with possessions on the objects. And that I didn't know objects could be haunted. I mean, it never really occurred to me. And that just brought into more where, okay, we're discovering more things that are happening. And that's where so I wrote the second book, Dark Transference, which is the sequel, because where the first book left off, I was then writing, I'm writing the first book, we're having things happening in the house. So I'm keeping a track of the second to make a second book, only because I've got to tell my story. My friends and family, when I was discussing with them around the holidays, right before, when we had closed up his house, they said, boy, if you don't write a book, Anita, they're like, nobody's going to believe this. This is crazy. What you're discussing, even my parents couldn't get over it. So that's where I started. And I always enjoyed writing short stories and little pieces when I was growing up in poetry, but never thought, oh yeah, write a book. I don't know if I could do that. I just started, just writing down things that I knew and speaking in a language that people would understand. It's very conversational and just discussing the different things that the chapters each discuss something that we were confronted with and how we were dealing with it. And it really seemed to resonate with people because they were identifying themselves. I said, you could be perfectly innocent, not knowing what you're walking into, and bam, it could hit you like, wow, what am I getting myself into? That would I have agreed to be executor to his estate if I knew what was facing me? And it has changed the trajectory of my life completely, where, one book, then a second book, and then I just wrote about my parents, which was in, several years ago, wrote their love story from South Philly, which has several very interesting kind of like unusual beginnings and what happened to my dad and what happened to my mom and how they came together. So it has a flavor of a little bit maybe of supernatural or, confluence of things that happen.
So one of the questions I would have, because, there's a lot of different aspects to this, a lot of different elements to it. So I'm going to throw out a couple things here. The first thing you mentioned is if I had any idea what I was getting myself into. Obviously, okay, now let's go back to your friend. The one thing I would wonder now, yes, he traveled all over the world. Yes, he picked up all these artifacts, right? Excuse me. And the question is, did he ever have an experience? Because I want to relate this now to the shift-shaping object that he had picked up, which I believe was shown on the TV show of some sort, but it would shape-shift into something else at the point where it was either identified as, it's this thing right here. Then the energy would go and it would shape-shift into something else, so you could never really get your hands on it or get rid of it or remove it or whatever. Because I don't know if it's your friend who was ever causing a lot of the unrest, or maybe it was his, like you said, someone that belonged to the documents or the family member or whatever. Don't know if there's so many portals and so many things coming in or whatever. Did they ever figure out, two-part here. One, did they ever figure out who is causing the most grief? That's the first thing. Secondly, is that shape-shifting object still in your basement, and if you and you have just left it alone so it just stays calm and put? What's been going on with either of those?
Yeah. Well, with concerning with my friend, the only thing that was something that really took me back, one of my conversations with him right after his mother died, that he was very close to her. His father had passed away maybe 10 years before that. He had said after she passed, he felt that she was there, that he felt her presence. And I said to him, look, you are a devoted son. And if her presence there is comforting you, she's not there to do anything else but to be, so maybe thanking you. And he felt good about that, that he said, okay. He did say to me, if something happened to me, he said, I want you to promise, that you will take care of things for me. And I said, look, let's not talk about you dying. I mean, you're a young man. I mean, he said, but just promise me if anything should happen. He said that you would be open to, like, I would try to contact you or you contact me if something happened to you. I said, well, okay, look, just to cut the conversation, I'll say yes. I said, but let's not talk about this. This is morbid, that, and as I said, he died like only a year or two after that conversation. He never expected to die suddenly. Concerning the other thing, he was in Peru, and this object, from what he was supposedly bought, first of all, the circumstances is he should have never been in that position that he was buying these things. He was lucky that at the time that he bought those things, that you could even ship those things back to the United States, because we found boxes that had been from overseas, and they were still labeled, but there was different things in them. I mean, there were several things from Peru that the brother took. It was like clothing, a beautiful alpaca wool poncho, and he had said specifically, he said, did you find any textiles? I said, yes. I said, you can have them. I said, I found them in the closet. We didn't know about the shape-shifting thing until we had the psychic medium in the house. We contacted them, and I felt that we could trust them because they were local and they had really great credentials. In fact, I still know the psychic medium and the people surrounded. They're become friends. She said to us when she walked in the door, she said, I want to tell you something. As soon as I walked in, she said, now I have in my bag, I have a Christian cross and holy water, because we never know what we're running into. She said, we don't we're not going to be ministers to exorcise demons, but we carry these things for protection. She said, as soon as I walked in his home, it said to me, your holy water is not going to do you any good. We're older than Christianity, they said to her. So she didn't tell me till later that this is what came to her. So when they did the mediumship where this man was taken over by my friend and he was speaking through him, that he apologized. He said, I should have never been doing what I was doing, collecting these things. He said, I purchased this. This was something that I should have told you about but I died, I died before I could tell you. Yeah. And he said it should be packed away in a lead type of container and buried. He said, I was going to do this, but I never got to do that. I think he was even tormented. He had serious health issues that he wasn't discussing with anybody. When I found out from one of the doctors from some of his paperwork, they had said to us, they said he got rid of his health insurance. He wasn't coming to the doctor or anything. He was keeping a prescription for asthma medication that they thought at first he was having an asthma attack, and he did too. He did not know he was having a heart attack. Mm-hmm. And I found it strange that it would be that kind of thing, because his father, from what I understand, almost felt like he was suffocating, that they had talked about what he went through. His brother told me his father he was suddenly taken ill. Then his mother was taken ill, and then he was suddenly taken ill. We don't know if that was part of it, that he had these things, but it was something where this thing is not of this earth. I mean, that's what he could get through to us. He said, this is not from this earth. He said it was found in Peru in a burial tomb. He purchased it from a farmer who found on his property, and he paid really good money, but the farmer wouldn't have anything to do with it after he gave it to him. Mm-hmm. He didn't realize what he had purchased, because this thing apparently he tried put in different places. I don't know if it was in his bedroom at one point, because as I said, we were finding things. If they were sealed in boxes, we were just taking them and said, we'll go through this later, because we only had a short amount of time to get out of that house, that we didn't want to stay there. So in the meantime, as you know, Kelly, my son had a heart attack 2 years ago, and he was only 40. So that was right after we had been doing some things in the basement. We had been moving things. I've sold some objects, which I tell people, look, this doesn't have anything really connected. I doubt. These are more souvenirs. These are not ancient artifacts. But this particular thing, it has shifted, that even our medium told us. She said, it's not what it was before. She said, it's more metallic now, but it will not let you find it, mm-hmm. because you can't have it in your hands. It's mm-hmm. too dangerous. Mm-hmm. So this is where we are. We hesitate to do more in the basement. I don't go down my basement very much. I don't have my washer and dryer upstairs. Mm-hmm. I do go down for seasonal things, but it's the kind of thing where we've gotten growls down the basement. We've gotten Bill Beansbound down there. We have a photograph of him walking away from us, and on the floor you see a snake design. And this snake thing is really kind of scary, because this snake thing was one of the images on the show that said it transformed into. Mm-hmm. And if anybody knows about the Mayan culture, now my friend was a Mayan Indian expert. He was down in Guatemala and South America many, many times, as I said, in Mexico. So the snake thing is almost like a god to the people of the Aztec and Mayan cultures. When we were at my friend's house in the basement, we had my cousin and her daughters came that I did not want them to come. They said, we want to stop and see you guys. I said, look, this is not an entertainment venue. No. If you want to come, I said, I said, there's a lamp that you want for your bedroom. I said, but I'm going to tell you, you're getting it out of a haunted house. And they were into this. Mm-hmm. We want to come and see. All right, look, you come, but you're not going to stay long. When they were down the basement, we had pretty much cleared out a big area. And one of my son's cousins was right behind him. He's walking through near a partition because they had removed a lot of wall space because they dug a trench and a system to get water out of the basement. We were having flooding in the basement. So we couldn't keep that up and still work in the basement to get these objects out of there. So they dug the trench, they put in the sump pump in. As my son's walking, the cousin screams out. She goes, "It's behind you, Chris." She saw a coil there was a 5-foot long cable that had been wrapped on a shelf. This cable was suspended and started wrapping around his neck.
Oh my God.
He felt it go up his back, around his neck. He screamed and actually rammed into the partition and fell down and hurt his leg. And he goes, "What? It's on me. It's on me." And we saw the thing fall on the floor. And the cousin said, "I saw that. It was behind him, suspended, and started going around his neck. It was trying to choke him." So that scared us to see if Bill's found this snake down there, we have this object. It just seems like things connect that we're not expecting. Also, the fact that my friend's father, we find out his connection with World War II, with the Nazi regime, and my experiences that we have, entities that have transferred here that are of a dark nature, and they're not leaving anytime soon. Even though Bill's been here, he has exercised things. He said, "Anita," he said, "they're going to keep coming back because they do not want to leave. They know what's waiting for them on the other side because of what they've done in their deeds." Now, our psychic medium who was here, there's a scene in the TV show that's very dramatic, and it's almost all true except for the shape of the entity that they show. We were in the basement. She's doing recording. I'm sitting down there. She said, "Anita, get out of here. Go upstairs." I said, "I'm not leaving you, Laura. You're down here. You got to leave." She said, so she's down there. I come upstairs and I'm like frightened. I go, "What is she saying?" That she had told me to get out of the room. She then runs up, white as a ghost, and she has marks around her neck. Something tried to strangle her. She said, "They were coming after you, and they came after me." She goes, "It's his father." She said, "He's got designs on you." She said, "And he was going after you, but he hit me." She says, "I'm going to tell you only a little bit, but I'm not going to tell you everything." She said, "The images I got when he attacked me," she said, "he's responsible for killing women and children."
Oh my God.
So she said of what he did as an SS officer. So that's in my second book, what the connection. And so the evil has permeated not just what my friend brought back as objects, but already the secrets were being kept in the family. And I've changed all the names in the book because I didn't want his brother to be, he might have known. I mean, I came across pictures that I gave to the brother, not knowing that I realized later that I saw his father in a dark, long coat. He was in the Klein's Marine. He was in the Navy. There are also two gentlemen behind, standing, and they're joking around, and they've got the gray outfits, but they've got the officers' SS helmets on. And I said to my son, I go, "I don't know. I think his father was." I didn't know at the time. We did find a military book underneath the carpet, and it was the German swastika. That was his military book, which I had given to the brother because I really didn't want it. But I did show it to my dad. My dad said to me, and I didn't even put the words SS. He said the SOB was SS. I go, "How would you know, Dad?" He said, "By that book." He said, "I'm going to tell you." We were all familiar what we would be encountering. Didn't know that after I had received a letter forwarded to me from a friend that lived in Maryland, she wanted to know how he was doing. So I wrote to her, sent her a copy of his obituary and prayer cards, and said, "I'm sorry to tell you." She called me. She said, "Anita, thank you for everything." She said, "I just wanted to speak with you a little bit." And I said, "Well, we went through a lot. We cleared out the house." And she started telling me. She said, "Well, I don't know if you know, but his father, Mr. So-and-so, was SS." I go, "Really?" I said, "Now you." She says, "Oh yeah." His wife and my mother, who was like near 90, they were seamstresses. His mother used to design clothes, and she was really well known. She had her own label that I found a lot of outfits and things his mother made, but they had that. But also, her mother was Jewish, And when they knew that she was taking her mother with her back to Maryland because she couldn't stay alone in her home, his mother and her mother, his mother apologized to her, said, look, we knew what was going on. She says, I'm just so sorry, everything, apologizing to this Jewish woman. So she said, yeah. She said, we all knew. It was very strange. We all knew what he was about, but nobody wanted to say it in the neighborhood. It's like, oh my God, I'm getting all these affirmations, like, okay, things that I wasn't sure, they're just coming to me. Like you've said, things find their way to you to explain things. So things were coming to me that, yeah. So that's,
you know what I find really interesting about this is, so his dad was part of this ick, I would call it ick, being an ick, but people would say something like this, but when they die, doesn't the ick go away and they become like if they choose to hang around their personality or the persona of what they used to be, wouldn't that also transform to something more positive? In this case, it doesn't sound like it has done any bit of difference at all, or did he get brainwashed to the point where this was what his job was, this is what he had to do, this is what his mind thought stayed, and that's just, when you think about it, there's so many theories on, when you die, you don't have your personality anymore, you become something else, or when you die, you're happy, and that's all that it is. But in this case, I don't know, I've got people also saying when you die, you might hold on to what personality for some reason you've been created to be like during this period of time. Is he buried overseas, or is he buried here in the U.S.?
He's buried in a family plot that's it's a little ways from here. He and his wife, they have a plot. Now my friend was cremated, and his ashes were taken out west. He wanted me originally to go, but it was the middle of January, and I said to the lawyer, I'm not spreading anybody's ashes out west. I said, I've got sick parents. He then said, look, Anita, he says, I'm going out to Aspen, Colorado on a ski trip. I'll take the ashes and we'll spread them out there. He said, because you need a special permit to carry human remains too. So he said, being a lawyer, he took care of that. He sent me pictures, which was really beautiful. It was a rainbow. It came about when he spread the ashes out on the mountain, that he didn't want, he wanted to be gone, and I say to people, like, this is what his last wishes were. So we did have a memorial a few weeks later after he passed, and we just had a ceremonial small casket thing on the table that represented him, but he had already been taken out west.
We will have you back, and I am very grateful to know you as my friend, and also someone who just understands this field so very well, even though you got thrown into it, and I walked into it, you got thrown into it. Same difference in the end, now that we're caught up in this. But and I'll make sure this all gets on the show notes. So Anita, on behalf of the show and myself, thank you so very much again for being on the show today.
Thank you so much, Kelly. And it was a pleasure seeing you again, and hope to see you again soon.